The Bloodline prepare for tribal combat on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown, as it was Solo Sikoa standing tall yet again on the road to the tribal combat with Roman Reigns for the Ulafala on the Raw on Netflix debut on Monday. But we also had some other significant developments, as you would expect in the first 3-hour edition of SmackDown. They got creative, they added some fun stuff, and perhaps the biggest of all was Tiffany Stratton cashing in to win the WWE Women's title, and we also had, the continued tease with the alliance between Drew McIntyre and Kevin Owens, how that relates to Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso and Sami Zayn and Jimmy Uso. A lot of stuff to discuss from this SmackDown. I appreciate you guys' patience. As I said, work obligations, family obligations have been a little under the weather. It's that time of year, right? Getting through the holidays. So the past couple weeks, we haven't done as many videos on the channel, but I do appreciate you guys being patient, getting back in the groove here, starting with the Raw on Netflix debut on Monday. We'll have a lot of fun stuff here to come on the road to the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania 41. But let's talk about SmackDown, as I know you guys have kind of already sort of seen a lot of reaction to what happened on Friday, but I think there are some interesting notes coming out of it. We'll start quickly with the Bloodline, as we usually do, because that is the biggest story as we go throughout WWE, and they are kind of pushing this tribal combat match as sort of a game changer on Monday, right? Because it is all about what happens if the Ulafala is transferred back to Roman Reigns. And I think, that's where things start to get interesting as we look further ahead. We also know that because I'm doing this on Sunday, usually I'm doing this on Saturday, The Rock has officially announced that he will be at the Raw on Netflix debut on Monday. And so that adds a little bit of interesting wrinkle into things. You would think he's going to be there for a couple possible reasons, right? It's either to have something with Cody Rhodes, or it's to have something with whatever happens in this match and perhaps have that in-ring stare down with Roman Reigns, or something happens to further the story with the power of the Bloodline. So when you look at the way they did things here, having the 6-man tag, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga get the win over Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, and Jimmy Uso. It's Solo pinning Jey, so they really wanted to, as I keep saying, you guys know over the past couple videos, I've said, they want to keep Solo strong heading into this match because they have to present this as a possibility that Solo is going to beat Roman Reigns, when I think there are 99% of people out there who think it's going to be the opposite, right? 99% of people probably think that Roman Reigns is going to walk out with the Ulafala, and we start the next direction for the story, whatever that is, whether it involves The Rock kind of in the long term, whether it involves the downfall of Solo, perhaps, as we've said before. Is this where Jacob Fatu and the Tongans start to maybe divide their alliances a little bit? Does that bring The Rock back into things down the road? All these questions we've been asking, right? And so, for them to get the win here, no surprise in this 6-man tag. It was kind of your typical sort of Bloodline versus the babyfaces 6-man tag, where, again, you're just kind of giving everybody a little bit of shine here, and just keeping the focus on Solo heading into this match. And, Sami Zayn and Jey have the stuff going on with Drew McIntyre. We know it's going to be Drew going one-on-one with Jey on Raw on Monday. And so I think just being able to tie all this together, and you guys know I've done the video talking about why I think it's one of the best things WWE has done in a while, in terms of how they're tying this whole story together. Everybody's kind of, connecting with the past history of the Bloodline. And we say actions have consequences, and the Bloodline's actions in the past are still having consequences, especially for the people who have decided to forgive Roman Reigns, forgive Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, and so forth, right? Just based on what they were doing for the longest time in WWE and making everyone's lives a living hell. And so now we're seeing that payback from Drew McIntyre, from Kevin Owens. We talked about the Seth Rollins angle as well, with CM Punk tied into it at Survivor Series. So everybody kind of has a reason and motivation for what they're doing right now. But for Solo, none bigger than trying to keep that Ulafala. And I thought the segment between Solo and Paul Heyman was good because it kind of set, again, a little bit more of a tone to say that, well, on Roman Reigns if he beats me, right? And so, again, it kind of let your guard down a little bit, saying, all right, see, Solo's not so bad. Come on. He's saying, hey, I will hand over the Ulafala. If Roman Reigns beats me, wise man, you put it on Roman Reigns. He will be the tribal chief. But then I thought it was a great line right after that, right? Where it's like Solo saying, but when I beat Roman Reigns, you're going to put this Ulafala on me, and you are going to be my wise man forever, right? So kind of putting Paul Heyman back in that threatening position to where, it does. It adds some stakes, right? This isn't just about Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. It's also about Paul Heyman. Like, his future is now hanging in the balance because if Roman doesn't beat Solo, Heyman is going to go back to the Bloodline, right? Fighting, kicking, and screaming, but he has to go back to Solo, and we know what ultimately happened to him when that happened the last time around. So I like just adding that little bit of wrinkle in here. Do I think it's going to really matter? No, because I think Roman Reigns is winning the match, but I still believe, as I said, that this is something where, they're doing the best they can to build up Solo as a believable winner in this match, even though a lot of people are going to be looking at Roman Reigns here as the person who comes out victorious. But I think over the past couple of weeks, they've tried to really, push Solo in that direction. Again, they've had him beat multiple people now, getting a pin over Jey here. That's nothing to scoff at. So I think that's kind of where we are as we head into Tribal Combat. And as I mentioned, this was also kind of the theme on the show where you're talking about the interactions with Drew McIntyre, right? Coming out in this match, offering a little bit of a distraction. And Jay's trying to take out Drew. And so that match is going to have ramifications too on Monday in terms of how do they keep telling the story of the Bloodline's kind of tree here and how it has impacted all the branches, right? That's kind of what they keep going with. So we know we're going to get that as well, and we'll see how that ties in for both men moving forward, knowing they're both going to be prominent, figures in the Royal Rumble as well, and then beyond that to WrestleMania 41. But speaking of Drew McIntyre, we know he started the show surprisingly coming out and interrupting Cody Rhodes, and then it's kind of where we see that alliance forming, which makes sense. Drew McIntyre kind of leading Cody Rhodes into attack by Kevin Owens. Owens comes up from behind. These two now with McIntyre and Owens both using the phrase, watch your back, right? McIntyre says it to Cody. We saw what happened. Kevin Owens bumps into Jey in the back, says the same thing. McIntyre comes out, tries to get involved in the main event. So you're seeing just this sort of, somewhat loose, but I guess they're tightening up a little bit in terms of this alliance between these two because, again, what's the reason, right? They have common goals. They have common motivations for why they want to see the destruction of these people who have been either in the Bloodline or they're kind of in that, kind of just hovering around the Bloodline, right? Again, those are people like Cody Rhodes and CM Punk, people who have somehow been able to forgive the past of what these guys did, and that is pissed off Drew McIntyre. It's pissed off Kevin Owens, and we know it's pissed off Seth Rollins. And so I think as you're starting to see this all come together, right, that they're doing such a great job telling the story, you don't really know what's next because you do have these guys who are able to kind of work together either directly or indirectly and still achieve what they want to achieve, and that is see something happen to these people that they just completely hate now based on, again, them forgiving what happened with Roman Reigns and everything else. So I thought it was a nice touch to kind of have that sort of connection between McIntyre and Owens. And look, I'm not going to be surprised when Rollins gets added into the mix with this, right? We've already seen the backstage stuff between Rollins and McIntyre. So I do think, this is something that continues to set up and add so many possible matches. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Think about all the different matches you can get out of these combinations of things here. So it's all focused with Kevin Owens trying to win the WWE Undisputed title, actually win it rather than just having the Winged Eagle Championship from Cody in the ladder match at the Royal Rumble. But, you still have to question, how is Drew McIntyre going to play into that? Could Seth Rollins play into that? Like, there's all sorts of questions I think you have to ask yourself coming out of this. But as usual, good stuff here, even for a 3-hour Raw, or 3-hour SmackDown that is. We're going to have 3 hours both moving forward. But even for a 3-hour SmackDown, I just thought things flowed so well because you did have all of these things that they were able to connect throughout the show. And it all kind of started with the opening segment with Cody and Drew McIntyre. It ends with, McIntyre coming out with Jey and the Bloodline stuff. So it all connects. And I think that they're just able to lean into that right now and make it really good. So, that's kind of what happened with all of that here on this particular show. But I would say the biggest thing coming out of this that people are going to talk about the most is the cash in, right? We said it. It had to happen at some point, and we knew that if it was going to happen, all the possibilities were debated back at Crown Jewel and everything like that. Well, let's see if Tiffany is going to cash in on Liv Morgan. I said at the time, I'm like, that is just not something that they are ever going to be able to do because the biggest impact you're going to have is if Tiffany cashes in on Nia Jax because you have established that relationship between the two going all the way back to when. Tiffany wins the briefcase in July. You kind of have Nia, become the the new face of this title, SummerSlam and beyond. And so you've really been establishing that relationship between the two. And so they took months and months to do it, but this was the time where you have Tiffany come out, you get a little bit of the swerve, thinking, all right, she's going to cash in, but then what does she do? Well, she costs Naomi, and you're thinking, oh no, it was all a ruse, right? Tiffany comes out, she's faked us out, she's just out here to help Nia. But then Nia goes to celebrate, Tiffany just completely takes her out, and then cashes in to win the WWE Women's title. And just as expected, you had a great reaction from the crowd, and I think that's, now you've kind of set in motion. Tiffany Stratton, someone who, she still cost Naomi here, right? She still threw Bianca Belair over the announce table, but she's still going to get kind of that tweener reaction because people don't, they wanted to see the cash in. They wanted to see Nia lose, but at the same time, they kept establishing the fact that, all right, this doesn't just mean that Tiffany Stratton's going to be someone who's just going to come out every night and you're just going to cheer, right? On every single scenario. No, because she did just cost Naomi the title. And she did just, throw Bianca over the announce table and all these other things. So I like that because it's not like, okay, all of a sudden you're going to flip a switch and everybody's going to forgive Tiffany Stratton now. No, like Naomi's going to be pissed. You better believe she's going to be pissed coming out of this, right? So that's kind of the same stuff we talked about. Like everyone who is making these decisions and having these actions, they are going to have consequences. It's not as easy as us just forgetting them, which again, I keep saying, back in the previous regime, that would have happened. Where Tiffany would have done that, she would have cashed in, all of a sudden everybody's supposed to be buddy and friends, right? No, doesn't make any sense. But now, how is Naomi going to react? How's Bianca going to react? Like, these are all questions. How's Candice LeRae going to react, right? Because she got the wool pulled over her eyes too here with Nia. And so, yeah, like there's all sorts of stuff you can do coming out of this. But the bigger story is the fact that Tiffany, I even see some people say, well, she's going to cash in successfully. I'm like, there's no question she's going to cash in successfully. She was going to have to do that because she is one of the next big stars of the division. We know that. Like, think about what they did. Go back to last year, right? Go all the way back to Elimination Chamber 2024, almost about a year ago now. Remember, we were talking about the reaction she was getting at the time. Go back to the first couple videos we ever did on the channel. The quality's not great, I promise you. But if you go back and look at it, right? We're talking about just the reaction she's getting in Australia and the people are behind her and all these things. And so it's been that slow burn, as it has been with others. But, now is the time to capitalize on it. People wanted to see it happen. You create a big moment on this first 3-hour SmackDown to make you feel like, all right, I have to watch this every week because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when the next big moment's going to happen, right? So I thought it was well done, especially with the little swerve before that. But it's not really a swerve when you think about it because it's really just building in the next steps, which you now know are going to have something to do with Tiffany and Naomi, who I think have always had good chemistry. They've had good matches together. And so how does that build in moving forward? And Bianca and all these other things. It freshens up where things are. And, of course, the natural return is what's Nia going to do, right? Nia is going to feel completely betrayed in all this. So there's so many things now. There's as many as 4 matches lined up with the people who are all around here whenever she cashes in. Naomi, Bianca, Nia, Candice. Like, there are 4 matches immediately for Tiffany Stratton if you want to do it that way. And, of course, many other people who can be in the fold as well as we get into the transfer window and all that. So, thought it was well done. Thought it was the right move for her to cash in on Nia. Great reaction. And now we see moving forward what they do with Tiffany Stratton. It's one thing to kind of have that build up, right? Everybody wants to see you do this. But now it's a matter of, okay, how do you keep it going, right? Like it was the same thing with like Cody at WrestleMania 40. What's the follow-up going to look like? And so now that you've given them that big moment, now you have to find ways, to keep that momentum going from a fan perspective to where she keeps getting these kind of reactions. The teases are one thing. Those are kind of layups. Those are easy to do. Now, how do you keep that momentum going? And like I said, I think the good thing is they already have so many people lined up to want to face her based on the relationships and, how she has kind of impacted all of these people throughout this run with Nia and all that. So great stuff here. Tiffany, well-deserved, I think, one of the top future stars, maybe not even just of the women's division, but of the company. I think she's got that kind of potential. And so, I thought this was really good stuff here with her cashing in finally to win the WWE Women's title. All right, elsewhere on this show, I think those were clearly the biggest things coming out of this. You did have Shinsuke Nakamura getting the win over Andrade, but that was really to set up what we now know is going to be LA Knight getting his rematch. next week on SmackDown. So LA Knight's going to try to get that United States title back, and then LA Knight adding in the note that, hey, he's going to do that, and then he's going to go win the Royal Rumble. So I like that they're already making sure, and I always love that. I'm like, make sure everyone is not just forgetting about the Rumble, right? Make sure everyone knows that, hey, this guy wants to be in the Rumble. He may want this United States Championship back, but he also wants to go main event WrestleMania. That should be everyone's goal. And so I like them adding that little tidbit in the backstage thing there. But we are setting that up. LA Knight, Shinsuke Nakamura. We knew they were going to get back to that match soon enough. And so that's kind of your big, teased match for next week. And we'll see how that one unfolds. But I think they've done a pretty good job with Nakamura so far. He does feel different, this new character direction they're having with him. But we'll see if LA Knight can get that championship back on this one. Here you had the match with DIY defending against the Motor City Machine Guns. And, just as you would probably expect, I didn't think we were going to get a clean finish on this one. Maybe some people did, but I just never thought it was going to happen. But, of course, it didn't, as it was kind of having the stuff on the outside where Pretty Deadly's involved, Los Garza's coming after them, and then that spills into the ring to force the DQ. So we've seen how they've tied in all these different teams, DIY, Motor City Machine Guns, Pretty Deadly, Los Garza's, Street Profits are still out there, right? There's probably a team I'm forgetting just off the top of my head, but they're really kind of trying to showcase how many teams that they do have kind of in this tag team title picture. It's just a matter of, how do you kind of get to that next big challenger for DIY? It was supposed to be Motor City Machine Guns here. They felt like, they kind of got screwed out of their opportunity because the match, they had the submission moves on, right? So you're thinking, all right, they're about to win the championships. Didn't happen because the DQ happens based on Garza's and, Pretty Deadly fighting into the ring. So kind of one of those, non-finishes that you're just quite honestly going to get on some of these Raws and SmackDowns moving forward, especially the 3-hour ones. I don't think you're getting clean finishes all the time. It's just not, let's be honest too, like back in the old school days, that was just the way it was. You weren't going to get that on all these shows. You want to build to the bigger matches. That's clearly what they're doing. So, I'm not against how they did this. You would have liked to maybe see a clean finish here, but you're just building the story moving forward. And I would think you're probably going to get also some of these combinations of 8-man tags involving some of these tag teams probably. So I wouldn't be shocked if we get Motor City Machine Guns and Los Garza's teaming up, maybe reluctantly, to take on Pretty Deadly and DIY. That could probably be a match that's going to be in the works. So, they kind of kept that going here with that. And, elsewhere on the show, you had Michin getting the win over Piper Niven. As I said before, they're clearly going back to that rematch, I think, with Chelsea Green, defending the Women's United States Championship against Michin. So that's just going to be something that happens. I think they're going to have the rematch. The question is Michin the person who eventually takes the title off of her? Not sure. We'll find out what happens there. Carmelo kept things going with Sami Zayn, had the Usos walk up, so they're keeping that running thread with Carmelo there as well. But again, that was really kind of the story of the SmackDown. It was really still all built around the story of the Bloodline. Those were your bigger segments, but I think creating that big moment with Tiffany cashing in is crucial because now it does, if you feel like this is the start of the new year, you want to set the tone early, and now if you're a fan, you're thinking, hey, they did the cash in here on SmackDown. I got to watch SmackDown every week. They're not going to save this for the PLEs, right? I got to watch it. It's going to be that same feel on Raw on Netflix on Monday. They're going to give you those big moments, and you feel like you've got to watch every single week. That's what you're supposed to do, right? As a company, you're supposed to build that excitement and all that. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, guys, appreciate you watching. Thanks for your patience again. I know this is a day late, but we'll get back in the groove here. Again, holiday's over. We'll get back in the groove. Raw on Netflix on Monday. But appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts on this week's SmackDown. And what do you think about some of this stuff as we head into Raw on Netflix, and what are some, predictions you have for the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania 41? Always enjoy your feedback. So, again, guys, appreciate you watching. Let me know your thoughts on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown.